everyone. I'm Kenny Whitebloom from the Digital Public Library of America. Once this computer is booted up, I'm going to present a little bit about what DPLA is and reflect a little bit about how that maybe reflects some changes in libraries. DPLA is actually located here in the VPL, so it was a short walk to get here. We're over in the Johnson building next door. I guess I could get started just with a general overview, and then I can pop into the slides based on how far I get. So DPLA is the Digital Public Library of America. It is a free online library that connects Okay, great. So here's a quick overview of what I hope to talk about. The DPLA, a little bit about our mission, which we comprise into three parts, being a portal, a platform, and a public option. And then at the end, I hope to touch base on how this might reflect changes. So as I mentioned, DPLA is a free online library that provides access to millions of books, photographs, maps, audio-visual materials, and more from libraries, archives, museums, and other cultural heritage institutions across the country. The two key phrases to pull out, or words to pull out, is free. Every access to DPLA is free for users. And secondly, the second word is access. So DPLA collects metadata about digital objects across the country. We don't provide access through our site to the digital objects themselves, but rather facilitate access to wherever they may be across the country. Today we have 8 million items, or just over 8 million items, and counting. So we've grown rapidly since launching in April 2013, when we had around 2 million objects, or access to those objects. These include images. So here I've pulled out some pretty interesting ones from New York Public Library and Digital Commonwealth, which are two of our partners. Also provide access to text, ranging from books and manuscripts to sheet music and other sorts of textual records. These are from HathiTrust and the New York Public Library. We also have an incredible array of maps, which is bolstered by the David Rumsey Historical Map Collection, which is really impressive and one of my favorites. So here are 3 samples from that. We also have a small but growing collection of video and sound recordings. So here on the left are a couple of videos from the Digital Library of Georgia and WGBH's Open Vault. We also have some sound recordings from the Mountain West Digital Library and others. This is admittedly a small part of DPLA, but it is something that we are committed to expanding. Users are very, very interested in video and sound recordings, especially educators, and that is a community that we hope to reach out to more. So that's what DPLA is from a user's perspective. I wanted to now talk about organizationally what our mission is made up of. And it's made up of what we call a portal for discovery, being the website interface for users to explore the millions of objects in our collection. It's also a platform to build upon. So DPLA, all of the metadata in our database is freely available to anyone who would like to use it to develop new tools and apps. So we call it a platform in that regard. And then lastly, we also consider ourselves an advocate for a strong public option. So we hope to expand the public domain, to expand citizens' access to free and open materials, and to provide an outlet for a strong public option in the face of increasingly restrictive digital licenses. So briefly, I just want to go through these 3 Ps, the first being the portal. This is the homepage for DPLA, so as you can see, it's made up of a few different interfaces, those being the DPLA map. So we have a map interface that allows users to search records based on geographic information. These are records that, when it appears on the map, it's not where the item is housed, but the subject of the item, so that sometimes confuses folks. We do not have geographic information for every item that comes into DPLA, so we often do a lot of behind-the-scenes work to kind of make best guesses as to where it should appear on the map when it's not entirely clear. So here, for instance, is some music that's related to Brockton, Massachusetts. So when you zoom into the map, it sort of whittles down into more specific items. We also have a timeline, so we allow users to search for material using years, decades. And this does not include every single item in DPLA. It's only those with time information, and so we do our best to estimate if nothing is available, but it is imperfect sometimes and a little messy. Here is the view from a single year. So I searched for music, I believe. So 162 items from 1925. If we were to click on that first record, the National University of Music, it would take you to the item detail page. And this is what a record looks like in DPLA. I would say it's fairly standard. Kind of got standard metadata fields here. It's also instructive to note that this is the full record, and that to see the digital object itself, you click on that View Object button, and it would take you out to the New York Public Library, which is where this object resides. We also have a bookshelf, so this is our way to view textual records, kind of simulates a library stack. It also brings up related images and items based on the book title and subject in various metadata fields. We also have curated exhibitions on nationally significant topics. This is something that is growing, and we have set up a pilot program with library schools to help curate exhibitions in classrooms, and that's been exciting to see. The first three here were designed by graduate students in library information science. I wanted to now talk about where the content itself comes from, where the metadata comes from, and that is through a network that we call our Digital Hubs network, and these are comprised of content and service hubs. So content hubs, we have 16 content hubs, and these are large digital libraries that operate on a one-to-one relationship with DPLA, and they provide at least 200,000 records to DPLA, and we aggregate those from them. And it's a one-to-one relationship, which is in contrast to our service hubs, which are state or regional digital libraries that aggregate on behalf of smaller institutions across their given state or region. So here in Massachusetts, we have Digital Commonwealth, and Digital Commonwealth travels around the state and provides services to institutions in Massachusetts, including digitization assistance, metadata enhancement and assistance, and other related services. So through those service hubs, we have around 1,200 partners or contributing institutions, and you can see it is a broad array of institutions that are represented in DPLA through this hub network. We use this model because it is far more sustainable than maintaining one-to-one relationships with every single organization that contributes data to DPLA. So this kind of silly graphic represents that. On the left, you would see the swarm of arrows that would be one-to-one relationships with every partner, and on the right, you see the reduced amount of contacts through what are like hubs being as intermediaries. Second P in the mission that I want to talk about is our platform, and the platform really is a combination of providing technical tools and open access to data in DPLA, and allowing folks with interest to use it to do so to the extent that they're able. So to illustrate that, I just kind of wanted to provide a very quick diagram of what the DPLA platform is in practice. So We receive various metadata from our hubs. We then bring that metadata or ingest it into our database, the DPLA platform. We then provide free and open access to all of the metadata contained in DPLA via two methods. One being bulk download, so these are just raw files. You can download gigabytes and gigabytes of data if you'd like and store it on your computer and do research and analysis, or you can access the data in DPLA via an API, which is an application programming interface, and that is essentially a set of tools that allows one program to interact with another program. This API powers apps, and it's important to note that the DPLA website that I just talked about briefly is actually an app. We use the API just like anyone else would use the API, so that's significant to keep in mind. We have had a growth of people building apps. These are third-party apps that folks have developed. I wanted to highlight a few, the first being OpenPix. So this is an iOS app that basically pulls your location and suggests related images or items to you from DPLA, and also other digital libraries. Second, and this one is my favorite, is Culture Collage. It is a visual browser that allows you to create collages on the fly of your favorite images, but it also is, interestingly, an app that is available through the Microsoft Office App Store. So you can pay a few bucks and have Culture Collage in your Microsoft Office setup so that you can find related images when you're typing up a report, which is kind of like an app inside of an app. It's very cool. And lastly is Serendipomatic. So this is a tool that allows you to paste in a given selection of text, and the program will take a look at all the words in your selection and suggest related items based on that. Lastly, the third part of our mission is the public option. So we feel strongly that DPLA should seek to expand the public domain and increase access to information. We do that through partnerships and collaborative work with other organizations, including Creative Commons and places like Europeana, the European Digital Library. One example of late is we recently launched a sort of a competition, an international competition with Digital NZ, which is the New Zealand equivalent of DPLA, and this is calling on folks to build animated GIFs using public domain or open materials. So through methods like this, we hope to highlight the value of the public domain and to bring more people into the fold and raise their awareness of it. Lastly, DPLA is, of course, a community of practitioners and users and technologists and many others, and we have been successful in bringing people into the fold and getting them involved through a volunteer program, a national volunteer program called the Community Reps that is now located in all 50 states and a few other countries, and we basically have worked with these reps to help raise awareness of DPLA and related topics in places across the country. Lastly, I wanted to just provide a few reflections on the kind of broader topic of evolving roles of libraries. First being, it seems to me that libraries are more institutions that enable actions and are less becoming repositories of things, so it's more verbs than nouns. I think that part of this type of this change in seeing libraries facilitating the development of tools and resources is that libraries are also acting as platforms. So they are providing the tools and resources to facilitate development of applications. So in digital libraries like DPLA, you're seeing this through APIs and other tools that allow developers to develop applications and other things without without having to get approval or oversight from us. They can simply do that on their own. You see this also in public libraries with the growth of maker spaces and other sort of collaborative areas. Also, part and parcel of this is that libraries seem to be no longer solitary islands, and that is especially true in a digital age. So with DPLA, it's an aggregation of various different digital libraries. So it's a master catalog, if you will, and it seems that through combining many digital libraries into one, you are doubling and multiplying the value of everyone's institution and everyone's collections. Library collections also, I believe, now span many institutions, which is somewhat different than having a single location or a single collection in an institution. So you see that, like in DPLA, for instance, Smithsonian Institution, which is a massive organization, is commingling with very small organizations in the same space, so that users, when they search for a topic, could retrieve results from a variety of different institutions, all being in one collection. So that's basically my little presentation. Hopefully we'll touch more on these topics during the panel.
So I guess we'll take questions after all of us have presented. Okay, so my name is Kijas, and I am from the University of Connecticut. So we already presented a brief bio, so I won't introduce myself any further. So I'm going to focus on training that we had done at the University of Connecticut, as well as some data gathering and analysis that led to beginning this type of training in order to do some reskilling and development of our librarians in digital scholarship. So during the past 3 years, there have been a number of published papers and reports on the changing roles of librarians and libraries, with a focus on digital humanities, or more broadly, digital scholarship. 2 reports that stand out specifically include Reskilling for Research, which was published in January of 2012 by the Research Libraries in UK, and New Roles for New Times, Transforming Liaison Roles in Research Libraries, published by the Association of Research Libraries in August of 2013. In Reskilling for Research, Auckland gathered data from 23 international libraries in order to assess the information needs of researchers and to identify skill sets which are necessary for subject librarians, information specialists, and liaison staff to develop in order to ensure that they meet the needs of a changing research environment. And you can see in this first slide here, her data revealed high skills gaps in 9 key areas, which were considered to be important at the time of the survey, and the respondents felt that these areas would only continue to grow in importance. So broadly, these areas focused around data management, preservation for both print and digital objects, metadata, digital tools and methods, and research funding. In New Roles for New Times, Transforming Liaison Roles in Research Libraries, Jaguszewski and Williams identified 6 trends through interviews with administrators at 5 ARL libraries, which included Duke University, MIT, North Carolina State, Purdue, and the University of Gulf. Although only Trend 3 focuses directly on reskilling and providing research support for digital humanities or digital scholarship, the trends as a group demonstrate a greater need for supporting development and training, as well as fostering collaboration amongst librarians and staff. Throughout the report, they discuss the necessity of using both informal and formal means to address the needs of researchers through new roles, as well as for supporting these collaborations and partnerships. Both the Research Libraries UK and ARL reports offered suggestions related to the implementation of informal and formal means. And these include the creation of internal library groups or teams, such as e-science, e-scholarship, data management, or digital scholarship, which can provide staff education and further identify campus needs that are not being met. And second, the creation of exploratory groups or work groups in partnership with campus units and departments, which could also provide education and identify current and emerging needs. And lastly, the creation of new initiatives such as labs or centers, which foster cross-disciplinary partnerships between faculty and the library. The findings in these reports mentioned above, as well as several others, such as the Research Support Services for Scholars, published by the Ithaca SNR, stimulated conversation and discussion amongst the subject librarians at the University of Connecticut Libraries. And this led to the creation of a year-long investigation during the 2012 and 13 academic year. I co-led this investigation, which involved using a mixed methods approach to gathering data about the use of digital tools in research and pedagogy at UConn. The first approach was to develop and distribute a survey which gauged the types of tools used by faculty and graduate students at UConn, and more broadly, digital tools of various sorts. The survey was distributed in November 2012, and we received 121 responses. And you can see here, we did focus primarily on faculty and graduate students because we are a research level 1 institution, and those were the people who expressed greater interest in digital scholarship to us. And so you can see that the highest number of respondents was from PhD students, trailed by graduate students in general, and then faculty of different levels. You'll also see that we broke this down by disciplines, and so social sciences represented 39% of the respondents, or 47 people, humanities 42 persons, and sciences 32. So it was fairly even amongst the disciplines, fairly I guess, well distributed. Oops. The questions we asked faculty and graduate students attempted to find out which digital tools they used and how they used them, as well as if they used primary or secondary sources to create their digital work, whether they used digital tools in their classroom or teaching, and how, as well as where, they stored the content they created. This survey was followed up with a series of focus groups in the spring semester of 2013, which allowed us to ask more open-ended questions and provide participants with the opportunity to comment, explain, and share experiences related to their engagement with digital scholarship for research or pedagogy. We held 3 focus groups, 90 minutes each, and we had a total of 19 participants. So these were very lengthy transcripts that we then assessed and analyzed. And the objective of the focus group study was to assess on a deeper level how familiar faculty and graduate students were with digital scholarship. We asked them to define it and to give us examples for, and then what are the current or planned projects that they were already working on or considering starting, what types of digital tools graduate students and faculty were using in their research and pedagogy, how did they interact with them, and then what the library's role was in supporting their research and pedagogy. The data gathered from this survey and focus groups demonstrated to us that there really was an interest and a need amongst faculty and graduate students to be better informed in all areas of digital scholarship, as well as to receive support or partnerships for digital projects, and for the library to play a greater role and an active role in providing not only support and training, but becoming collaborative partners in their teaching and their projects. And I would be happy to share the reports if anyone's interested afterwards or at a later time. So based on this data that we collected and our analysis of it, we chose to initiate a digital scholarship training series for the 2013 to 14 academic year, which would introduce the UConn librarians and staff to various topics, tools, and methods used in digital scholarship. It would also provide an opportunity for hands-on exploration. It would provide resources that can be shared with graduate students and faculty, and also create a small learning community where we could freely share our ideas and skills could be developed. My colleague Jennifer Lansing, who is the history subject librarian, and I surveyed the subject librarians in order to determine which tools, software, or areas in digital scholarship would be of most interest to them, as well as potentially to their faculty and graduate students. And so we discovered that many of the subject librarians were eager to learn more about the general landscape of digital scholarship. For example, what are the type of projects that are being developed in their various disciplines, as well as more specifically gain familiarity and training in text analysis and visualization, data organization and management, geospatial visualization, and digital content curation. Moreover, many of the subject librarians welcomed the opportunity to attend hands-on workshops where they could try these tools in an informal, kind of low pressure or no pressure environment. And so we offered 6 hands-on workshops during the fall and the spring semester of 2013 through 14. And these are listed here. They are the Introduction to Digital Scholarship, which provided this general overview of what is digital scholarship, focused specifically on the areas that the liaisons or the librarians identified as being most of interest to them. Again, that was analysis, visualization, and open source publishing platforms. And so you can see we had exploring text analysis tools, cleaning up messy data, using Neatline for digital mapping, creating and curating research with Omeka, and then creating maps using GIS tools. As part of this workshop series, we created a co-authored LibGuide, which is a public LibGuide, and you can see the URL at the bottom there, with information about the areas that they expressed most interest in. This guide featured descriptions of each area with definitions, some examples, links to online tutorials, select digital tools, bibliographies, and blog recommendations. Each workshop is also described on the LibGuide and includes slides, handouts, audio, or video when made available. This LibGuide was created for use during the series and beyond, so that the librarians and other staff could continue to learn how to apply certain tools, as well as stay up to date with emerging digital projects, tools, and conversations in the field. The workshops were led by Jennifer, the history librarian, myself, as well as other librarians and doctoral students at UConn who had expertise in using the tools or methods selected for the workshops. 5 out of the 6 workshops introduced open source web-based tools, which could be used without having to purchase a license or software package. And these are the type of tools which often do not require any programming language expertise and are built to help users do specific tasks, such as organize content or run analysis on a set of texts. You can see Neatline here, which is a tool that runs on top of Omeka. It allows you to do geospatial and temporal visualizations. And then Juxta Commons here, which allows you to basically create versions and find commonalities across documents, as well as a couple other functions. Or Voyant, which is used for text analysis, allows you to pull word frequencies, do other kind of counts, word counts, trends. Oops, go back there. We have a license for ArcGIS, which was used for the last workshop on creating maps, but this could have been taught using open source tools such as Quantum GIS. The student who taught the workshop is a PhD student, and her familiarity was with ArcGIS. Each of these workshops was announced in advance, and descriptions were included in the LibGuide as well as via email to all of the library staff in order to allow them to choose whether or not this topic would be of interest to them and whether they should attend the workshop or not. So the goal was not to simply do a demo of digital tools, but to introduce them to thinking about how they could approach research topics, data sets, and other content or objects using the various tools from each workshop. We provided data or content for manipulation and use during each workshop. This series was an opportunity for the librarians and staff to gain exposure to tools and topics in digital scholarship, as well as to become acquainted with terms and resources that they could share with their faculty and students. One of the things that we've heard for many years, and we still do here, is that some of the librarians aren't comfortable speaking to their faculty about things like data management. They don't know how to start. They don't know how to talk to them about storing their data, whether it's in humanities or social sciences. And so that's something that we're working on, and we're trying to get them comfortable with just being able to use the terminology and pointing them to repositories or pointing them to other people in the library or on campus who can help them further and to facilitate those conversations. In order to continue to engage with the subject librarians, as well as the library staff, faculty, and students at UConn with ongoing digital scholarship training and thinking, the University Libraries approved a new initiative, the Scholars Collaborative, which was launched in 2013 as a pilot and is now an official group. And this group works collaboratively with faculty, students, and staff on digital scholarship projects, as well as provides training and coordinates events which are focused on the evolving needs of our researchers and librarians. The Scholars Collaborative provides an opportunity for library staff to also become project partners and contributors based on project needs, as well as the expertise that they can bring to that project. Reskilling for digital scholarship requires continuous training, development, and immersion in current trends, projects, and thinking. There are a few libraries that have offered intensive project-based training opportunities for their staff, such as the Developing Librarian Project at Columbia University. This project was started in the spring of 2012, and it's still ongoing, and it allows staff to develop greater understanding and skills in specific tools or areas around a specific project. They're working on creating an Omeka archive around the Morning Heights community. This approach may not be possible everywhere. For example, our workshop series did not provide a project-based training opportunity. However, it did provide the subject librarians and staff the opportunity to receive hands-on training, acquire new skills, and to become familiar with entry-level tools and concepts over a period of an academic year. In my opinion, I believe that project-based training opportunities are generally more successful in reskilling staff because they require ongoing skill development and growth, which allows staff to learn and apply their skills in ways that a single workshop cannot. However, in order for project-based or immersive reskilling initiatives to be successful, you need to have buy-in from the people who will be involved, including the subject librarians, ITS staff, as well as the administration of your library. There needs to be a collaborative effort among staff, especially those who actively support faculty, students, or researchers in learning and developing in areas of digital scholarship. Rather than reacting to changes in research needs, librarians and the libraries that we work in should anticipate these upcoming changes and become better prepared to address and meet them. Active involvement through projects and continued engagement with emerging trends and conversations in areas of digital humanities, data management, or preservation, for example, gives us the opportunity to shape and support research trends in the years to come. Thank you.
So I'm Marty Schreiner. Good morning. I position myself as last in this panel because I think I'm going to talk about a little bit more on the front lines of the service, and I'm going to talk about our multimedia authoring model for teaching and learning and support for multimedia at our institution. Now I'm from Harvard. Harvard is actually an institution that changes very slowly, and but a couple weeks ago, I think for food for thought for thinking before I come down to the front lines about what I'm going to talk about here on my model, which I think will add an interesting discussion after with our panel. A couple of weeks ago, our new librarian, she's vice president of the Harvard Libraries, many of you may be aware, Sarah Thomas. It's a new kind of a position. She's just been there a little over a year, and we're really kind of reorganizing to really become one library. We've been struggling with this for, well, long time. But I think we are making a lot of good progress. My unit, I have a very long title, Head of Maps, Media Data, and Government Information. It also includes environmental research, and this was actually very much part of a reorganization from a few years ago. It's a unit that came into being in 2010, and it was a result of, following on our world budgetary crisis, and all institutions were kind of readjusting, and my unit sort of came out of that. And it was actually a bunch of different things that came together that in some ways felt like the university didn't know what to do with this, so they put it, see what you can do with this. But it was always all of us in the unit that really was the digital technology that really tied a lot of these things together. We've actually really made a lot of progress and started a lot of new things just in the last few years. But to begin, like I said, to provide context, a couple of weeks ago, Sarah Thomas had a symposium at Harvard. We were talking about the problems with remote storage and sort of moving to digital access to our collections, and how the university, of course, the university, we're interested in that long tail, so we have to make that available. Even if people are not using it, we still have to have access to that, and sort of what are the models that we need to be going to the future. Kenny said something I think that's really at the heart of really this whole conversation, this panel, and that's really that libraries are really no longer solitary islands, including huge institutions like Harvard. I mean, those of us who work in libraries, we've always known that it's never really been solitary, but this is really critical now. One of the takeaways from this symposium was that I think building remote depositories, somewhere for storage for off-site materials is not a sustainable model. Our remote depository at Harvard is filling up. We're almost full, and we're at that point where we have to make a decision. Do we add a new module? Do we continue to do this? If we do a module, this is probably something we don't want to do again. So what is the model? So anyway, this is kind of a topic. I put this out there because obviously open access, things like the Digital Public Library of America, all these things I think are the tools that are going to help us get to this new world I think that we're all headed for, even though we don't know exactly what it looks like yet. So anyway, I think in my unit, I'm talking about authoring with multimedia. And when I say multimedia, that's inclusive of audio and video, film, GIS, interactive cartography, and visualizing numeric data, and all of those kinds of things. In 2010, when we started, we had a multimedia lab that we just begun with our unit. And at the beginning, we had a couple of faculty who were kind of ahead of the curve in their teaching, and they had a lot of their students doing multimedia projects, and it was really based around video. So we started with video, but it really became quickly obvious that it really wasn't just about video, it was about a lot of these other things. And this, I think, was when our unit for maps, media data, government information, all these things really began to gel, and rather than being separate units, we really became more integrated, and it's a very aggregated set of specialties with some amazing expertise. And working as a unit, we actually now, rather than working as separate little units, we actually work together. We share work. When we our maps, for example, when our maps, they do an exhibit, our multimedia and our data people, everyone's in there sort of helping put together an exhibit and archiving the exhibit and working on it, rather than the old standalone way. So this may be old hat to a lot of you, but at Harvard this is new for us, working together. But it really is a key, I think, to moving forward, clearly. Along with this, like I said, we've been struggling with for a long time. I haven't been allowed to hire any new staff in several years. We've, of course, been sort of coming out of this budgetary climate. We're going through a reorganization, trying to figure out what that looks like before we just jump ahead and start hiring people. But I've just posted in the last couple of weeks just 2 brand new positions. And so one is actually for the social sciences and visualization. So it's not just social sciences. It's also gets in this idea of multimedia and using these digital tools and tools of digital scholarship that Anna was talking about. So it's a very, very brand new kind of position. The other position is a multimedia specialist which works in our multimedia lab. Thank you. And this position is a very different kind of position. And when HR went to their grid to find a grade for it, the library grid didn't really have anything that was really comparable, so they had to go over to the Harvard University IT grid. to look for a comparable kind of grade level. So I say that because it just shows you how jobs are changing in the libraries. I see this very much as a library job, even though it's very requiring technical skills and really kind of a comfort level with dealing with IT issues and problems with software. But they're really running a lab. They're helping anyone come in there, and they're training students. We're very much reliant on a student staff. Our student staff get a lot of training. Our lab is open 24/5. We're hoping to expand it because it's really too small at the moment, and we're accommodating more and more courses. I mentioned back in 2010 we were directly working with 2 faculty members who were very much involved with it. Since then, we're working with about 30, and we know there's at least 20 other courses out there that are being taught. They're using multimedia that we don't really have the bandwidth, which is why we're beginning to try to think about expanding what it is that we do. I think another important thing that Anna mentioned was a collaboration, about how working together across your institution to kind of establish things and bring things together is really critical. You need people who are on board with you, who understand the problems. I think this has taken us some time. This is why I think it's taken us several years to come to the point where we are, for people to realize really what this is. I know when our unit was first formed with multimedia authoring, well, it was actually maps, media, data, information, people were wondering what that is. And we were also working with these faculty who were authoring with multimedia, and people were going, what is that? Why are you doing that? So one of the first things we did, we created a multimedia object, and we actually explained our unit in just a kind of a little 4-minute short, so people could actually see what the maps did, how that related to our government information and data and census data, how you could make interactive maps, and how that related to research with environmental research. And we actually, cited a lot of resources for the Cape Wind project and how things were, data that we were getting from there, and showing studies, and how all of this really just tied together. And our multimedia lab made this really kind of a vibrant, interactive kind of a video mashup of all these different kinds of things. And people saw that in 3 minutes, they got it. Whereas before you could talk to somebody for 30 minutes or an hour and they still really wouldn't know what you were talking about. So I think I say that because of the value of this material. It really is, I think, a part of serious scholarship, authoring with media, and it really is a kind of authoring. So establishing a program, this is kind of a simple looking model. I mean, authoring with media, I mean, it really in many ways is the same as authoring with a traditional paper. I mean, obviously you have to know what you want to say. You have some kind of thesis. You need to do your research. And you need to be thinking all along about what you want your, obviously, I have an arrow here, it's very simplistic, but obviously your eye is on that target, that end project, what you need that to be in the end, who your audience is, what do you want it to say, how you want it to say it. The purpose of our lab is not so much about the technology. Technology, as you know, is getting easier and easier as we go along, which I think is really a good thing. And so people can focus more on the content. And we're really about helping people have an easy time with the technology. We're actually at the moment planning to put in, we're hoping to be able, I'm sort of recommending, so don't take this too far beyond the room here, but we like to have like a one button video recording studio where you don't have to think about green screening or lighting or stuff. It's just set up, you come in and push a button basically, and that's it, and you take it away on your flash drive, and then you can edit and do whatever else you want with it. But that kind of idea is the kind of tools that we want to have available to our students and faculty and staff and anyone who wants to use these materials, so they can concentrate on the writing and not be hung up in the technology. Like I said, our student staff get a lot of training. They're trained in the first semester that they're hired. They're trained, they get 32 hours of training. And then each semester they continue their training for there's several hours in there because things change, and so we're always updating them. We find that we learn as much from our students as they learn from us. We try to create an environment where it's not really hierarchical at all, but really, no matter who you are, if you're doing the work, you're sharing what you're doing, you're sharing what you're learning. If you have a problem, we kind of try to share problems to see how they're solved, and that's really very much essential in the way that we work. So anyway, I think this is you can see that this is the obvious thing we want to help students. We try to work with faculty right at the beginning of student projects. So we're talking directly with faculty and their teaching fellows. Teaching fellows can get special training from what we have at Harvard, the Bach Center for Teaching and Learning. They have training so that they understand authoring with media and that they can help their students along the way. So when we talk with them, we actually understand what they want to get out of their assignment, so that our staff, when they help them, they understand exactly the problem they're trying to solve, and they're not just, it's not just starting from the beginning with a particular piece of software, a particular thing. You actually really understand what the faculty member expects out of the project. Grading these things is another aspect which I won't get into very much, but usually the actual sort of polished Hollywood end of their project is the least important part of it. It really is all about the content, about what the students put in there, how well they make their argument, and not necessarily how polished it looks, but how well they present the argument is really the focus of it. And I know many faculty use a 5-point system, and the sort of the end polish thing is almost like an extra credit point for just 1 point. And they really try to get at the content. But anyway, we work directly and closely with faculty and teaching fellows to understand them. And we're doing this better now than I think we used to do, and I think it's this program that's helping us. Our lab is not just librarians. We work with our academic technologists. They very much share in the lab. We have staff there. They actually help share in supporting and maintaining the equipment, providing training. And so it's very much a collaborative effort. As Anna was saying, this is really kind of the real essence of the way you need to approach this. Our libraries and museums, our collections obviously becoming much more digital. I think even the distinctions between museums and libraries is becoming less of a necessarily a wall. And certainly students are taking advantage of both. So they come to us, and I think the advantage of having a multimedia lab and a program right in a library space is that we can actually help them connect with the collections. We have people there who actually understand them. And so it's not a lab that's off in some kind of an IT environment somewhere. It's really kind of integrated with our services and our spaces. And this relates very directly with how we think about our library spaces. Moving forward, I think we're going to be using less books. The buildings that we're in, that my unit is with, I think that in the future we're going to see that the footprint for those books, the space that they take up, is going to be greatly reduced, so we can make more space for the collaborative kind of learning that Anna was talking about. And I know that's actually beginning to evolve a little bit, that I've heard here at the BPL too. Just think about how people use your space, how they need to use the space, and how they can engage with your staff and the expertise that your staff has. This is one of the big problems that we have at Harvard. I think our expertise, we have wonderful staff with just amazing skills, and it often gets hidden. And we really want to really put that out front and center so that everyone understands it and takes advantage of it. And that really is a part of this process. And I think an advantage of having this program and a multimedia program and lab in a library space. And so clearly, as well as our resources, students certainly, they also come with theirs in putting their project together. So there's this faculty member, their expectations for the project, the kinds of materials and things that they gather from the libraries and museum for the project. But they're out there doing their own video, their own interviews. They're also collecting their own data and putting their data sets together. And they have all their own archival materials. And so integrating, putting that all together is really what it's about. And we try to really make that as invisible as possible. Like I say, it's really about the content and not having people get stuck up in grappling with all the resources and where they are, grappling with the technologies and using it, but to make it as transparent as we can for them, and so they can really focus on the content, and that's really kind of our purpose. So some of the larger ways, some of the connections we have formally set up here at Harvard. For undergraduates, our Bach Center for Teaching and Learning has an instructional support services team, or teams actually, that are put together when a faculty member is putting together a new course. Right from the beginning, the faculty member sits down with a member of the Bach Center, a member from the library, a member from academic technology, and from our archive or from where else you need, so that it's understood right from the beginning what's needed or what's possible. This may seem obvious to some of you, but at Harvard we haven't always worked this way. But it's really nice to have it all in front of you at the beginning to know, rather than discovering along the way. I know Anna mentioned the PhD in her study, the PhDs and the technology and the digital scholarship kinds of tools that they're using. At Harvard, we have a secondary PhD field in critical media practice. This is one of the ways that we deal with it. So graduate students who are doing their PhD, and there's going to be some kind of a media component to it, they actually take this secondary program to really get the skills, again, to get at the content, to know how to do it, and to know how to use the technology and what's available. And the university is providing them with a lot of support with any of the media that they need, archiving these things later on, which is obviously clearly important. Keeping ourselves together, like I said, it's hard to be understood, and like Anna said, it's really a campus-wide thing. Harvard is a very complicated campus, which we're still trying to get our own minds around. One of the things that we did at the beginning, because it came obvious to me when we first started multimedia with authoring, no one knew what it was. There was a lot of faculty who were trying it out, but they were kind of solo doing it and by themselves, not really having a lot of others. So in order to build community, we started this Faculty of Arts and Sciences wide expanding the boundaries of authorship group. And what we did is we had panels of people. We began with panels of people from the library, from the writing program, from academic technology, and from the libraries. And faculty would come and talk about how they're using multimedia assignments with their students. They're talking about their best practices that they found. And I was really surprised how open they were about failures, the things that that didn't work so well, and why they didn't work so well. So it became a forum, which is exactly the purpose, really to kind of talk about what we need to be doing, finding ways of best practice, and sort of building on that community. So we're still doing this. We have programs that we do out through the year, and a couple years ago, we started like a winter session program in between terms where we have an event. We're planning another one for this year where people can come in from across the university. You don't have to be a student. You can be a student, faculty, staff member, anyone. Because we're finding it's not only students that are working with multimedia, everyone, even our staff members are beginning to do multimedia kinds of projects for their teaching and learning, if they're in research services, or as you know, you're probably working on many of them yourselves. So we are trying to provide a community so we're all on the same page about what are the best practices and how can we come together better. And of course, data visualization and data management are big things that are coming here. And I'm just to wrap up here, just when I talk about library spaces, this is one of our newer spaces for a kind of collaborative learning and teaching. And it's a different kind of teaching where someone can project from their laptop and students can, at their little group tables, they can work as groups or work together. But we're trying different kinds of models. Get a quick shot from our multimedia lab. We have all kinds of software there, hundreds of kinds of software. We are very reliant on lynda.com for our training. Our staff use it. We have it for our students. And even a lot of our students just use it for their own projects, for their own training, what they need to know. But we are just recently had a campus-wide subscription for this. We used to have it just in our building. We had our separate subscription, but we were able to get a campus-wide subscription, which makes a lot of sense because it's just an invaluable tool. We couldn't survive without it. And just an example of some of the undergraduate courses we have. But everyone comes in to use. It's not just undergraduates, graduates, undergraduates, researchers, staff. We're kind of open to everyone. So anyway, I will stop there, and I hope this will open up into an interesting discussion. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Michael Colford. I'm the Director of Library Services here at the Boston Public Library, and I think one of the dangers of having the event in the space that I'm working in is I thought I'd get here 10 minutes early and be all ready to be the moderator for this panel, but you started early. So I was supposed to introduce the panelists and give you a little introduction. I'm just going to make a couple of quick points about from a public library point of view, and then I'll jump right into the discussion. As Kenny mentioned, one of the main things that the Boston Public Library is doing right now with our digital services is working with other institutions across the state to really, still with a lot of public libraries and smaller academic institutions, we're still in the providing access to information by digitizing historic collections and really getting that out there. Not yet so much into the digital scholarship idea or that collaborative with users in creating new scholarship using digitized materials. And as one of the service hubs for the DPLA, as Kenny mentioned, we're going out and really digitizing collections for any institution any cultural institution across the state, whether they're academic libraries, public libraries, museums, historical societies, clubs, just about anything that has a collection that needs to be digitized. And providing that digitization service, but also the metadata assistance, which has really been the greatest challenge we have found. Especially, not any institution, but many institutions have no problem creating metadata for themselves or for their own institution or for their own solitary repository. But once you begin collaborating, of course, you know there need to be standards, there needs to be uniformity, or else it's not really going to work. And that has been a huge challenge, from the extremes of institutions that have no ability to create metadata, they have no staff to do that, to institutions that do it really wonderfully, but in their own way. Bringing that all together is, has been a big challenge collaboratively. An area where I think we're going to see some great growth and the potential for a pseudo-public digital scholarship is we're going through, as you probably noticed, a major renovation here. So we have an opportunity to, through our renovations, really look at how we want the library to be used going forward. This building, or the other building actually, was designed in the 60s, built in the 70s. Libraries, of course, have changed a great deal since then. And a lot of what we're thinking about is how we want to both use and display a lot of the collections we have digitized in this new space. These collections, for the people who walk in the door, for many of these people, these collections are hidden, they don't really know they exist. We really want to get them out there and show how they can use them, and they can curate with them themselves, they can create with them. Kenny mentioned makerspaces, of course, that's sort of the public library expression of the digital scholarship, or the content creation or content curation that the public can do. So we're starting with our teen room, which will open in February. We'll have a digital lab where they'll be able to create and display and do all sorts of things there. And then the second part of the renovation, which we finished in 2016, we will have an innovation center for adults that is going to be focused really on the business library, but we expect to see that expanding into other subject areas where people can really create scholarship of their own and combine that with historic primary source material that we have digitized, and start creating new things in a way that the public can really have a whole range of, from very simple creation to very in-depth scholarship in a public library, even one that has a research piece. It still will be fairly new, I think, in the public area. So that's all I'll say really about the public side of things. But I do want to open this up for a discussion, and I'll start with a quick first question, because I'm very interested, Andy, you were talking about this whole training program that you put together. How well received was that by the staff? And because that's, you know, it's a big step for staff, and some people are really engaged and some people need a little more encouragement.
These are on? Yes. Great. Okay. Well, so I also brought up a program at Columbia, the Developing Library Project, which I've actually gone over there, and they've come over to UConn, and we've had many discussions about training and the kind of success with using project-focused training versus one-shot workshops. One of the reasons behind why we went with a workshop series rather than a focused, project-based kind of training session or series was partly because staff didn't feel that they could commit. So let me give you an example. At the Columbia Libraries, they have the history and the humanities team spending several hours a week, as well as meeting once or twice a month for 2.5 years on this developing librarian project. That's a big commitment. They're doing instruction, they're doing reference or research services, they may be involved in other committees on campus, and that's a big chunk of time that they have to take out and commit to this one project. And they're expected to actually do work on this project. It's not just they're learning how to use tools, they're actually creating the content, the metadata, they're plotting maybe points on maps. They're doing a lot of this work. And so that was, we had considered different options, and because of the commitment with time and other involvements, the staff felt that they could not do something as immersive. And so that was one of the reasons why we did that. Otherwise, the staff was very happy to have this series offered to them, because they will often attend workshops that are offered through the libraries or on campus. We have an Institute for Teaching and Learning that offers brown bag workshops where you can go and sit in and take a class on using WordPress, for example. And the staff are encouraged to do that on their own as well. But this felt more like a, although it wasn't as immersive, it was still a focused kind of series where they had input and provided feedback about the topics they wanted to learn about, the tools they wanted to use, and we also collected data afterwards. So we asked them to fill out a survey and tell us, what did you like about this workshop? What did you not like? What do you want to see in the future? And so on. Yeah.
So I'd like to, did everyone hear the question?
Essentially, yes. So Chris is asking, at Harvard, it sounds like you've created positions to fill specific roles, new roles or needs, whereas at UConn it's evolving out of the staff. And so for UConn, I'll say that currently, yes, it is evolving out of the staff. So there are staff who are being kind of reskilled or who have taken the initiative to step up and say, I want to do this kind of work. For example, I'm currently the Scholars Collaborative Coordinator, which is basically the role of a digital scholarship librarian and also the music drama librarian. So I'm splitting my job in two and taking on both roles. We do have staff who have already existed as geospatial librarians, for example, visualization librarian, systems admin librarian, and so we're sort of shifting the way that they're doing work and putting them more into the public kind of facing positions where they're now partnering on projects or they're teaching workshops rather than being behind the scenes, as well as our metadata librarian who is working more with the public or the scholars rather than behind, in the back room, in the cataloging room.
And are you genuinely shifting, or is this piggyback? Because what a lot of institutions, and if you watch the digital humanities list, a lot of people are screaming that suddenly they've become an adjunct to a particular professor's goal. The professor has been told to go out by the dean of the faculty or something, do something flashy, and suddenly the library staff or the technology staff is being siphoned off into that project, but without any sort of break on their normal duties, right? So I was wondering,
I mean, I would say that I haven't seen that kind of a drastic, kind of push of, okay, you're doing this project now and you have to continue to do everything else you're doing. I'd say that we are adding things to our plate. We're not just being simply, repurposed, I guess, if you want to use that term, and placed in a different position or role full time. And part of it is because, funding issues and lines that haven't been given to us for new positions. But we, for example, with the Scholars Collaborative, what we do is we don't just say, okay, we're gonna do your project for you, or we're going to give you, all of our, metadata and geospatial people's times to do whatever you wish. We come up with service level agreements. We do project charters. We talk with everyone and make agreements about, okay, who's responsible for what. And so that's something that I've put in place, and we try to use that so that people don't feel like all of a sudden they're working two full-time jobs. But we are doing,
Yeah, it's actually a very good question, I think, for a lot of ways. I mean, I'm hiring for specific positions, but I've been actually, I've had to hold back for 5 years before I've been able to hire anyone, so I've really been struggling. But now that I'm able to hire them, I mean, we're in a very different environment, so I'm able to actually have these jobs be exactly what I need to have now. But we also, at the same time, expect people to be transitioning. I think this is something that we're struggling with right now. I think that we expect people to continue to learn. I expect people who work within my unit. I'll include me. I mean, we all look at our own jobs. I'm willing to rewrite people's jobs every year if we need to. If they change that fast, that's what we do. But change is essential, and I think doing it well, like Anna was saying, if you working within a university, and to your point too, like sometimes a faculty member will come and they'll take a lot of time. It's important to be clear in your structure what agreements you have, what arrangements you have, who's responsible for what, and what the limits of your job is. But again, you need to define those and describe those in a way that sort of works in a larger picture of things. That larger picture is always evolving and changing. So that's why I say I'm always saying to my staff to be looking at what you're doing. And if you think you need to be doing something in your job, come and talk. We'll talk about it, and we'll talk about it in the larger context of our goals in the Harvard Library, if it makes sense, and talk about making adjustments if they can be. So I think it's both things, and you have to be paying very close attention to it. And I think learning in general, I think the attributes that we need these days in librarians are people who are willing to be constantly learning. Like Anna was, I think Anna herself is one of these people who's a good learner. It's there. But you need to be willing to always take a fresh look at things and not sort of get making the same assumptions or sort of get locked into one way of thinking about what it is that you're doing. But you always have to be open for new things, but in an intelligent way, so that you don't get sucked in, like say, because you only have so much time. We all have fewer staff than we used to have, and we all need to be working differently. So what is that differently? What does that mean? And at the same time, I'm always thinking that our faculty at Harvard, they understand what they want, as you probably all experience the same. They know what they want for their research, but they don't really understand the library or what we do. And so I think we need to do a better job in conveying what it is that we do and what can be expected, and then where those linkages are across to academic technology and research computing and to the other people that we really have real strong collaborations with now and working with. Not, I know in my experience it used to be very, very separate, but it's much more together now, and that really is essential.
I'll just add that also working with other departments on campus, so outside of the libraries, we've been forming partnerships with departments such as the Digital Media Design group, as well as the Humanities Institute, and just other departments, primarily humanities, some social sciences. And so faculty who may have graduate students who are looking to do some type of project-based work will also come to us, and sometimes they have grant funding attached, sometimes they have internship positions or some type of independent study for course credit. And so we often try to get those people involved as well. Our university also offers internal grants for faculty and students to do projects. They don't have to be digital scholarship projects, but they can just be, research and scholarship. And so often if there is some money, we try to bring in a student to get, who gets paid to do some type of work and learn and get something out of it.
I mean, that's interesting because, that's actually where we come across is the faculty member is offered the grant. The library is not offered the grant to support the faculty member, but we are required to support the faculty.
We're trying to change that. So I'm very frank with the faculty, and I have conversations with them about, if you want us to work on this project with you, if you have a grant, you need to write us in. And you need to give us time or ask to buy out time or add a student in on the project. And I think that we have to start having those conversations. It helps if you have good relationships with those faculty so that you don't offend them. But, sit down with them and just say, this is what it is, this is how much time it takes. And realistically speaking, we can't just stop doing our jobs to do this one project.
So I do want to do a time check since we're actually at the 11:55 mark. Are we still on schedule for?
Yeah, we
and
just did close.
Great. Okay. So is there one more question or? Yes, go ahead.
A couple of questions about the DPLA. What exactly is the relationship between the DPLA and the archive.org? Is it just a hosting service for the DPLA's portal? And also, is the DPLA equipped to handle entire institutions' digital content?
Sure. So archive.org is the Internet Archive, and they are a content hub for DPLA. So they provide hundreds and thousands of metadata records that then facilitates access to the digital items that live on their site. So we don't host the items for them. And your second question was whether or not institutions can use DPLA as their own repository. And the answer to that is not currently in like a one-to-one way. So if there's a hub in your region or state, you can have metadata aggregated by that hub and it'll appear in DPLA. I think that in the future we're interested in having sort of a DPLA in a box type installation in which a institution can, who doesn't necessarily have a digital library of their own, but they have archival collections that are digitized or soon to be digitized, could fixate their dp.la/map or their timeline on their own collection, and then have it buoyed by the fact that there are 8+ million other objects that users can then search through if they would like. So that's something that we're interested in the future, but right now it's
Alec, actually, because you're in Connecticut, the University of Connecticut has the Connecticut Digital Archive, which is a service hub to DPLA. So come talk to us.
And I was going to say, if you're in Massachusetts, you can contact us because we can also do some of that too. So. All right, well, I think we're out of time, but I do want to thank Marty and Anna and Kenny for, okay, great, yeah.